Hello, everyone. Welcome to another show of Citizens for Progress, or New Hampshire Citizens for Progress. There we go. And we're going to continue speaking about money in politics. We had done a show previously on dark money, and we're going to continue focusing on that. So thank you for joining us, and enjoy.
Tonight, we're going to start a fight to take back our democracy.
So, Eric Benavides, National Coordinator with Wolf Pac. I have been volunteering with the organization for 4 years now.
My name is Jody Newell, and I'm also a national coordinator with Wolf Pac, and wear a bunch of different hats within the organization. I've been volunteering for about 3 years now, maybe 3.5, something like that.
So, Wolf Pac is a nonpartisan organization. We are working towards a amendment to the Constitution to address the overwhelming amount of money in our politics and to try and rein that in to make what we call free and fair elections, free from the influence of money and of big money, and fair so that anybody can run and for president, for office. So that's basically what our movement is about. We share this movement with many other different groups, but what's different about Wolf Pac is when we first started, we took a step back and looked at the movement as a whole over the last 40 years. And we saw that there was a piece missing from that puzzle, what historically movements like this have done who are trying to get an amendment, they've done an Article 5 call. So Article 5 of the Constitution says that either 2/3 of Congress or 2/3 of the states can apply to Congress to propose an amendment to the Constitution, to have a convention to propose that amendment. And all the previous groups that have really fought for an amendment have really used that Article 5 as a piece of the puzzle in their movement. And we saw that this movement really wasn't utilizing that. So we decided to fill that gap, to be that piece of the puzzle. And we've been fighting now for about 6 or 7 years now to get that done.
Yeah, I like to say we're the teeth of the movement, and the reason is because, like you said, this is historically a way to pressure Congress. So we have two different ways. Congress could do this at any time, but they don't have the proper motivation, I feel. And so this is a piece of the puzzle that has been the motivating factor, has pushed them to move, to do something. We've never actually had an Article 5 convention before, but what it has done is it has pressured Congress to do this. So whether we get to a convention or not, we need to have a push for it so that we can kind of give the proper motivation to Congress.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to commend my colleague, Senator Miller, on this, a very important issue. We're moving, unfortunately, ever increasingly in a direction of, instead of having elections, they're becoming auctions. And I think we need to address this very serious situation. And I thank all those who came up and demonstrated. It does make a difference, and I encourage you to stay involved.
And I, too, join Senator Miller and all our colleagues, but especially to the advocates that have been here day in and day out. The Wolf Pac is a movement that is going throughout the country, and I congratulate them for their efforts in getting involved, especially many of you who, for the first time, showed up, and now you're seeing how you're making a difference. So stay involved, and I hope everything goes well.
You've been successful here in New Hampshire, and you've got that New Hampshire signed on to what's the 28th Amendment?
Yep, we actually were successful in a movement, and this was mostly American Promise and New Hampshire Rebellion, Open Democracy. They were able to pressure, they were able to pass their resolution which calls on Congress to propose the amendment, which is an absolutely necessary step. We need to keep that pressure going as much as possible. The only difference with our resolution, which we have passed in both chambers, just never in the same year, is we call for a Article 5 convention of the states. And that is the other piece of the puzzle in the Constitution. It's the check and balance on Congress that allows the states to propose an amendment. And as Jody said, we've never actually had that convention because as we get closer to the 34 states that we need in order to call that convention, Congress feels the pressure and does not want to give up the amendment, the ability to propose amendments. So they feel pressure and they propose the amendment themselves. And that's the way it's happened with the Bill of Rights. The greatest example we have is the 17th Amendment. We got within one state of calling a convention to propose the 17th Amendment, and Congress threw their hands up and said, nope, we'll do it, and they proposed the amendment. So if you're looking for an amendment, we feel like this really needs to be part of that movement because it adds teeth, like Jody said, to the movement. I equate it to we've been asking and asking and asking, but you only ask the kids so many times to pick up their toys. Eventually, you tell them to pick up their toys. So we're done asking. It's time to start telling, and that's exactly what our movement is.
I think the 17th Amendment is a really good example. And the reason why is because this was something, so if you recall, the 17th Amendment was the direct election of senators. So before that, they were appointed, and of course, to have them be representative of the people, then they would be directly elected, right? So essentially, this is something that directly affected Congress. So they were the people who have the power to propose the amendment, but they were also the people whose interests it might go against, right? That it would go against. So in this process, the Article 5 was the call for an Article 5 convention was a really important and essential piece because it actually pressured them. It was where the people said, if you don't do this, we will, right? So I feel like this is directly analogous because who's getting all this money? It's all going into these congressional campaigns. So if we're going to try and get something implemented that goes against Congress' interests, we have to have the people pressure. And this is the way to put on the people pressure and say, if you don't do this, if you don't propose this amendment that will actually address this issue, we the people will.
Mm-hmm. So how do you go about accomplishing this? You've been working at it a long time, little bits and pieces are going. How can our viewers who are concerned about this become active and help this become true?
Yeah, our focus is on citizens, everyday average citizens. Eric and I are both parents. We both have full-time jobs. We both have a lot of other things going on in life. But we set aside enough time to lobby our Congress, our representatives in the State House. So we go and we have meetings and we go and talk to them about the process. We try to encourage them to vote for it, to sponsor it. It's really just about citizens talking to their legislators. And anyone can do it.
So what we've done with Wolf Pac all across the country is given people the tools to have access to their legislatures, many of these people for the very first time.
So I just met up with Jazz Lewis, Delegate Jazz Lewis, and he was a classmate of my sister at College Park. He's a co-sponsor of our bill, so it was cool to see him. I'd never met him before today, but I recognized his face from Facebook. So I just went up to him, shook his hand, started to talk to him, and he gave me his card to get in contact with him.
I'm glad that I'm actually showing that I care, if that makes any sense. Like, I'm not just reposting that I care. I'm not just telling my friends, hey, this is something I am in favor of. I am out here proving it.
Yeah, and we have 5 states on the board already. We started with Vermont. We got California. Then we moved on to Illinois, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. And the way that we did that was not with money, not with with paid lobbyists. It was just with regular people showing up to the State House, talking to the legislators, making phone calls, emailing. That's really all it is. We are a movement of regular people. We have paid staff at Wolf Pac, but there's only about 5 in the entire nation. The rest of Wolf Pac is made up of people just like you that have stepped up and said, enough is enough. I can't sit on the sidelines anymore. this is too important of an issue. I have to do something. And whether that something is sending an email to your legislators, whether that something is, being a social media person, creating content, or just helping us with any kind of housekeeping that we might need as far as like documents, things like that. Whatever you can do to help really helps the movement. I have to just say that in 2016, when we came the closest to passing in New Hampshire, we had 50 people at the State House for our vote, and we came within 14 votes in our 400-member House of passing. And that day, I was so proud. Even though we failed to pass the House at that point, I was so proud to see that many volunteers out in front of the State House fighting for our democracy, basically. So I really believe that this movement is going to happen, and it's going to happen with regular people like you and me.
So a lot of us don't have a lot of time. We can do emails. We can call our legislators by phone. It's certainly really effective to talk to the legislator that represents you. I mean, they're on a committee. You can take and pick the ones on the committee and call them, because even though their constituents may be another location, the fact is that they're on that committee and they're representing everyone in New Hampshire. We have social media, and going to the State House can be a little difficult because the House reps, they don't have an office. It's like you can't go to their office to talk to them. What you have to do is you have to actually pull out the itinerary for the day, what member committees they're in, where those committees are meeting, and what time they're meeting. And then you have to stand in the hallway outside that committee room for them to finish, and that way you're seated there. You can also, some of them eat lunch at the cafeteria at the State House. Talking to the senators, there's only 24 of them, and they have offices. They're much easier to locate, to be able to have your discussion with. But it takes a little bit of time, and it's so difficult living nowadays. Not everybody has that time, but there's many ways that you can help and become active. One of the frustrations I feel is there's so much money in politics now that we just looked at the election out in Seattle. Amazon put like $1.5 million into the city council. I mean, that's not even state legislators. That's a city council of Seattle, 1 point. That's unheard of. So I get frustrated with, sometimes I feel he who has the most money writes the rules. So that's why I feel this is a very important area for people to assist in. What do you have coming up? Where can people get a hold of you? What actions are you taking in New Hampshire? What time frames, periods?
So right now we are preparing for the upcoming session. We are essentially gathering support at this point. Actually, Eric will probably be better to talk about that.
Yeah, we have a sponsor. We have a interesting rule in the New Hampshire legislature, where in the Senate, in order to introduce a resolution like ours, you need 2/3 of the majority in order to do that. It's just a rule that they've had on the books for many years now. So that's our biggest hurdle really in New Hampshire, and that's what we're working with right now. The biggest thing you could do right now is to contact your senator and ask them to support free and fair elections. And that will help us get over the hurdle to at least get introduced into the Senate. But also, helping out. There's many other movements other than ours also that you can help out with. New Hampshire Rebellion, American Promise, Take Back Our Republic. All of these groups are really working hard, and I know especially like New Hampshire Rebellion, they have a voters' rights rule in there. They have public financing of elections. They have all kinds of things on a state level that can help us out as well. And all of those things help us because it really brings the issue of money in politics to the forefront. And obviously we're part of that movement as well. And we're going to be having info sessions, meeting with different groups, hopefully to build a coalition and get some support for this. But really, all it is just making it a priority for the legislators. You would be incredibly surprised at how much influence a constituent like yourself has. I'll give you an example. I went up to a legislator in the 2016 session. They told me at the beginning of the session, flat out, I will not vote for your resolution. So I thought, okay, I'm writing this person off. I'll focus on other people. But through our movement, we got, I found out later, 7 constituents to call her. And she approached me right before the vote. And she said, I heard from my community, and I'm going to vote yes today for your resolution. So 7 people in her community flipped her from a no, a solid no, to a yes. And that's the power that you guys have, is that little amount of people calling her on this issue got her to vote yes. So you have this power. You know, you were talking about the 1.5 million. Yes, we are fighting a mountain of money. But on the state level, we can still get through to our legislators. They still represent us. And I've seen that on a daily basis at the State House. They still represent us. Maybe not on the federal level in Congress, but here at the State House, they still represent you. They'll still take your call, and they'll still talk to you. And that's a great thing, and a great thing to see.
Well, with that many representatives, it makes it real easy. They're usually within walking distance of where you live. Mm-hmm. So I've never found one that's been unwilling to talk to me. You also do conference calls that's dedicating a certain amount of time per week, per month, and to be able to get informed about this. That was one thing we didn't mention.
Yep. Every Tuesday night, 8 p.m., we have a conference call with our membership. Also with anybody that would like to join. If you want to find out about that, when the conference call is, get information, you can email newhampshire@wolf-pac.com. That's newhampshire@wolf-pac.com. And we can definitely get you on that mailing list so you're getting that information. And also, if you just want to get involved right now, you can go to wolf-pac.com/nh and get all the information about what we're currently doing and be able to act right now and find out all the information you need about our organization.
All right. Well, I look forward to this. I mean, I'd like to get out of not being frustrated anymore that what I have to say doesn't matter. It matters who's got raising money to run for election. It just seems, either side that I vote for, that just seems to be the case.
This resolution, I believe, is actually just pushing us forward into the opportunity to continue to voice our opinions as Americans when our own government is faulty.
Our committee asks you to join us in taking this bold step. And yes, I do think this country listens to Vermont, little Vermont. I was here when we passed civil unions, the proudest moment of my life in this body. And look now, civil unions, that's passé. Vermont does lead, and they do listen to us.
Obviously, the Supreme Court hasn't moved, Congress hasn't moved. This is a great way to put pressure, and this is a great way for Maryland to step up and put pressure to get, obviously, get the money out of politics and restore some sort of clarity and integrity to our electoral system. So
it doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. The citizens of this country get it, and they're completely fed up with the corruption happening in D.C.
My name is Alex Paxton, and this is
Christina Coulter.
Yeah, we both live in North Laurel in Howard County. Pendergrass is a delegate of ours. HJ6 is important to us. We think that dark money in politics is having a corrosive influence, and we'd like her to support it.
Just anywhere on there.
That was great, man. I just kind of threw you in the fire there, but it's always better coming from a constituent, a single contact from a constituent. She's going to get that put in front of her, that this bill and that people showed up from her district and they support it.
And I mean, if to go back to the history as well, we did everything during that 17th Amendment movement. We did everything we are doing now. We protested. We called on Congress to propose the amendment, and nothing happened. So they took this step of doing the Article 5 convention, and when, like we said, they got within one state and Congress threw up their hands. Because you're giving them a choice. Give up power or do the right thing. And, historically, they have always done the right thing rather than giving up power. And I believe that this will be the case. You mentioned, the pressure from money. And I have to bring up the Montana example. And we bring this up a lot because, we had, the governor of Montana, in our state talking about this issue not too long ago. And what happened in Montana is they had rampant corruption back in the early 1900s. They had rampant corruption in their politics from miners that were mining their land. They had filled the legislator with all of their cronies, and the people passed historic campaign finance regulations to get back their democracy. And when the recent decisions in the Supreme Court took those protections away, Montana fought against it. They tried and they got all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said to them, no, we've already decided this. You have to let money into your state, even though you had for 100 years historic campaign finance rules. We have decided that your state is wrong. You cannot govern yourselves. You have to let money into your state. And I feel like that's the wrong thing. This is a state's issue. What happens in New Hampshire should be the choice of the New Hampshire citizens. And really that's what this fight is about. It's for us to be able to govern ourselves and be able to tell the federal government, if we don't want your money, we're not going to take it. So really, that's what this movement is about. It's to bring the rights back to the states.
So we're not high-priced lobbyists. We're individual people just showing people how much their voice matters.
Research scientist, software developer,
senior in high school,
business owner and a mom,
graphic designer,
student at the University of New Mexico,
naturopathic physician,
farmer,
volunteer at Wolf Pac.
There was a reason why the ability to call an Article 5 convention was put into the Constitution so that the people can be a check against Congress. Congress is doing what they want for their donors. They are not concerned with what their constituents want.
We have made our presence known again, and every year that we are there, it becomes stronger.
Thousands of people out there who just are like giving up because they don't think anything's going to happen, but they actually have to get up and fight for what they think is right.
We will not give up until we have a 28th Amendment.
One of the guys that worked with us from the very beginning, his name is Charlie Cooper. He's inspiring to me because he's a retired guy. He's supposed to be spending his time going to Florida or stuff like that.
Delegate O'Donnell, how are you?
Looking forward to sitting down and talking to you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Hi.
Charlie, how are you doing? But instead, he works 40 hours a week plus working on this resolution. His energy for his age is extremely inspiring. And, I always think if he can do that, if he can come down here, I can find the time as well.
People don't know the power they have until they use it. Because there is no feeling greater to know that not only has your voice been heard, but it's actually effective.
So that's almost like a two-edged sword here. If we're saying that we want transparency or restrictions on unknown contributions, whether it's PACs putting out mailing that you don't know, it's not a candidate, you don't know where it's coming from. And we have to do something about campaign finance. I mean, you can't do one thing without doing the other.
Yeah.
So what's the activity in that area?
Well, there are movements like there was in Maine and in Washington to bring public financing to the state. Our movement is really, we want to have a national conversation. We want everybody at the table to be able to talk about this issue and bring their ideas and propose that amendment, something that's going to be good for the whole country. But on the state level, there are movements as well that we support to try and fix the problem that we have right now with disclosure so that we can get rid of this dark money, with public financing of elections, with vouchers so that the candidates have a choice to come to you rather than going to the big corporations and lobbyists and donors and unions. They can come to you, the citizen, in order to get your vote. So yeah, there's great movements on the state level. I know Jody works with a lot of other groups too that are doing a lot of good in New Hampshire to try and fight this movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm also a volunteer with Rights and Democracy New Hampshire. And, this is one of the issues that we are very focused on. What I thought was really interesting was last year before the summit, we have a summit every year, and last year they did this giant community survey. I think it was about 900 New Hampshire residents who did this survey, and one of the top issues, actually the top issue for what was corrupting our democracy, and I'm pretty sure it was tied for first for what we needed to address first, is money in politics. That is the issue. So when we're talking about New Hampshire, there are a lot of people who are aware of this, obviously across the country. But I think we're pretty aware of what's happening. It's just a matter of kind of how we go about it. But all of these different organizations and all these different groups that are involved in the movement are so essential because it needs to be everybody.
Yeah, and this isn't a white or a red or blue issue. This is an American issue. We work with conservatives, we work with liberals, with progressives, with everybody, because this is everybody's issue. When we passed the Senate back in 2016, we passed 22-2, and that was in a Republican majority Senate, because this is not a partisan issue. This affects everybody. So we have to come together on this issue.
Well, New Hampshire here, we're a primary state. There's a lot of Democratic candidates for president. If you have the time, you can show up at one of their events and ask them, what are you doing about money in politics? Sometimes I don't feel you represent me. I feel you represent the person that gives you the most money. What are you going to do about it? It's that simple. Take the time, and thank you for watching New Hampshire Citizens for Progress. I hope you have a good night or day, as the case may be. The shows airs at various times, and it's also on my YouTube channel, Rick Maynard. Take care. Be well.
Eric Benavides, National Coordinator for Wolf Pac. We are also a nonpartisan organization working on getting money out of politics and ending corruption. We work here in the state of New Hampshire, but we also work nationally with thousands of volunteers. And we're working to get a 28th Amendment to the Constitution to fix this problem.
Wolf.
Wolf-pac.com.